Whoa. All right, in usual RTJ fashion, we're outside on a freezing cold mountain morning, but for very good reason. We have the 14 Pro, a 13 Pro, a Pro camera, 3 Pro photographers, and we're gonna make 3 massive professional prints, all to see whether this thing really holds up. Let's find out. This clamp scares me. Oh God. So we're gonna be using the RAW setting, the Pro RAW setting on these phones. And we're gonna be shooting, of course, RAW on the Sony a7R III. We chose the a7R III because it has basically the same megapixel count as the full-size 1x sensor on the 14 Pro. Pro photographer number 1, we got Hunter Scrimshaw here. Not only does he help us shoot and edit over here on RTJ and the Lone Ranger channel, but he runs his own photography business. It's called Hunted Stills, and that's his camera that we're using today too.
Now we had our work cut out for us because the first thing we had to do was capture the most important comparison image of the whole day in order to get those 3 enormous prints made for later that afternoon.
But once we get these printed, I'm gonna put them on a wall. Only I'm gonna know which ones are which, and between Hunter and Beth, they're gonna decide which one they like the best, and they're also gonna try and guess which camera took which photo. Better get it quick. Yeah, really nice color contrast, like super warm grass and then the cool frost in the distance. It's cool.
And after getting that main comparison shot done, we took a few more images that should really test all 3 cameras.
All right, now that we've got those files sent off to the printers, removed locations, we've got another pro photographer here. That's Beth. Before we went full-time with YouTube, Beth and I ran 2 different photography studios, and she's taking the next photo.
Okay, so we're gonna do portrait mode on the 3X lens, which is 77mm. Right off the bat, one of the things I noticed is that with the iPhone 13 Pro that I had to be a lot closer to get the portrait mode to work properly than I had to be for the 14 Pro. So yeah, I kind of grabbed them together and was just thinking it would be the exact same experience, but the 14 Pro actually was just a little bit better already, so.
And that's pretty interesting, but are these differences enough to warrant the extra cost of the 14 Pro? We'll see.
Swipe over easier.
All right, so we think we got some good comparison shots. Let's head back to the studio and put them on a big screen and check things out.
Okay, so first up we have portrait mode is at 77mm, and it doesn't actually say which one's which is even better. So let's have a look. It's kind of scary how close they are. Like there are differences between all 3.
For sure.
But there's more similarities than there are differences between this and like a Pro camera, which is pretty insane.
Like the big thing that stands out for me is just that the foreground blur on these 2 images.
Oh yeah, the middle and the left.
Yeah, this is sharp almost like all the way through. It hasn't really compensated for the foreground.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy because when you look at the backgrounds of each one of them, they look almost identical. We chose 2.8 for the portrait mode for both of these phones, and it really does look like they've really matched actual 2.8 on like a full frame sensor.
It has a very nice bokeh.
Which one's the 14?
This one.
Center? Yeah, you're right.
Which is obviously like an improvement from last year, because if you're on portrait mode, they always try to dump something in the foreground just to really center in.
That's where a lot of the magic is a lot of times, right?
Yeah, totally. Just to center in on this beautiful man here.
This is a phone, okay? And so what I have been used to, and it's still used to for other cameras like GoPros and things like that, if you put a scene with a ton of green in it, all the camera sees is a whole bunch of green, and usually you'll try and like throw more reds and blues at it to try and balance everything out, and it looks like garbage. Whereas the thinky brains inside the phones, no, I prefer thinky brains. Now it understands things so much better, and I hope actually companies like GoPro and things like that catch up with this type of auto white balance, because it is really impressive.
Yeah.
I remember it wasn't that long ago that you and I, when we were shooting a portrait session, we could take a photo that would have thin depth of field, so like blurry in the back, blurry in the front, and turn that camera around and show our client who we were photographing, and they would lose their mind, because the only time you could ever get that is with a professional camera and a professional photographer using that camera. So now it's like, oh.
And you want to talk
That's
about...
why we're not professionals anymore.
That's why we're out of the game.
Our only trick.
Yeah. So this next one that I'm pulling up right now is from this morning. Really high contrast scene. It was incredible out there, as you saw, and you could see like kind of in the foreground, closer to camera, you had this warm sunlight on like greeny brown kind of grass, and in the back, all that long grass was like frosty.
Oh, it was incredible.
Insane, as you can see here. So that combined with like heavily backlit scenes, mega contrast, it was a big test for any camera. I think it's pretty easy to tell what's what, because 2 out of the 3 of these images had a ton of AI thrown at it, and that whole photonic engine is working overtime on this. You can see in the highlights. One of the phones certainly juiced the shadows more than the other one, like this bottom one here.
Oh yeah.
Definitely has more shadows pumped up than this one. On the background there, see the difference in detail. Oop.
Yeah, you start to lose it on this one here for sure.
This is going to be a depth of field difference on that.
Yeah, for sure.
You can see,
Yeah.
you know, we're focused on the tree, and just behind that, it's going to be blurred out. That's just how it rolls with a bigger sensor. You can see a lot of purple fringing on the actual DSLR image, so it's not quite as controlled there. These tiny little lenses on these phones, they have to have a ton of purple fringing. Like there's no way it doesn't, but if it did, man, it sure gets rid of it nicely.
It's just been corrected so nicely.
So you're saying top right is 13 Pro.
So you're thinking that this is 14 because it's handled the grass better?
Yeah, and just like...
Oh yeah. Yeah, maybe you're right.
This one was the 14.
Oh.
Yeah, so the one with more detail.
Was the 14?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Ah,
what
I
you're saying
see.
is I was right.
All right, next photo, little action shot. I was really curious how the cameras would handle this, and so we decided to let the phones do their thing, including all their computational photography. And I wanted to see if it was going to do something weird with something where it needed to freeze motion.
Right off the bat, look at this one and I'm like, oh, this one has more
the left?
separation from the background on the left. And so I would right away be like, oh, that must be the DSLR.
You can also see this one, the phones are actually struggling a little bit, because you can actually see a halo around me.
Yeah, a bit
where
of
it's
blur.
trying to lighten things up.
Definitely.
And it just looks weird.
Sony far left, 14 in the middle, 13 Pro on the right.
Agreed.
Yep,
Yeah, awesome.
got it.
That's still insane though.
The biggest thing I was curious about was, you know, with computational photography, lots of times it's taking multiple images, many images, and mushing them all together. So I was like, well, what is it going to do if I'm jumping or like fast motion? Is it going to be able to handle that? And it did just
Definitely.
fine. There isn't any like weird ghosting or anything like that. We've got a 3x or 77 mil equivalent shot. And this one is another high contrast scene. We're really trying to make these cameras struggle a little bit. I don't know, what do you guys think? Pretty easy to tell what's what?
I mean, iPhone is just working to compensate for the sky there,
Yeah.
the blue,
Yeah.
and then you can see in the Sony that it's a little bit blown out, but I'm sure you could bring it back in.
I'm gonna drop the highlight just right
there
now,
you go.
just see what happens.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
can definitely
not quite
see
the
it.
same. And the cutout, so that actually brings in a good point. When you drop just highlights and things like that, even using a computer, not doing it manually, lots of times you can kind of get some haloing around some sharp edges, like we could see on the Sony image on the top there. But if you notice, there really isn't much of that at all. They do such a good job at that now, and they did not used to do a good job at that before. Now, having said that, between the two phone photos, I wouldn't be able to tell you which one's which.
Yeah, they look super
They look
similar.
So similar.
I would say other than the sky, all three cameras actually handled general contrast pretty similarly.
Yeah.
So let's see which one is
Not too
which.
bad.
Okay, yeah, center one, 14 Pro,
14 Pro.
Boom.
13 Pro over there,
And then Sony.
Sony times over that way. Not that different.
No, pretty impressive actually.
Yeah. Well, here's an interesting one, and I hope it's because the lens was dirty or something, but we can just show you which one's which. But on this comparison shot, I really just wanted to blast it straight into the sunshine, and you can see that on the 14 Pro, which is on the left, it's got quite the flare going on there. They both have a similar flare down lower left, but
Yeah.
I don't love seeing that big stripe across there, because iPhones have had a big issue with that over the years, and on the 13 Pro they were able to get rid of that, and I was pretty stoked.
And now it's back.
Now it's back.
So I'm hoping it was some sort of anomaly or something. Let's hope that's the case. Super fast before we go in, we just heard that the prints have been printed. We're gonna go get those, hang them up on the wall, and we're gonna do a little blind test to see which one's which and which one actually prints out as a big old professional print better.
Yeah. See if you need that big dumb camera or not.
Yeah, big dumb camera. But this is a 1x sensor, so the main best sensors for both of them. They look extremely
They're
similar.
so similar. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
now we know
oh.
which one's which. Because
Oh wow.
Wow.
one, these are both shot in RAW. One is clearly 12 megapixel, and then the other is clearly 48 megapixel. And if this is wrong, then that's a problem.
Then that's a problem.
So this one on the left had better be
Gotta
the
be
14.
14, yeah. If it's
Okay,
not,
good.
okay.
14.
If it's not, I'm returning it.
Well, that's a huge difference, and
Yeah.
maybe we'll see if we see this on the prints.
Well,
but
that's
when we
a-
zoom in
yeah.
like crazy like that, that is a massive difference. Like the image just starts to break up so badly. on the 12 megapixel image, which makes sense.
And that's the whole thing too, right? Like
That looks good cropped
Yeah.
in this much. Like there is nothing wrong with that amount of detail right there. Yeah,
So,
that's that is a lot of detail for
Yeah, I'm impressed for a freaking phone.
yeah,
man.
for a
crazy.
lens this big and a sensor, that
Yeah.
big.
Insane.
Let's go check out those prints.
Let's go pick them up.
Okay, so I just pinned up the first one and it is the Sony and it looks great. Everything's nice and crisp and sharp. But that's what we expect out of 40-some megapixel professional style camera. So now I'm gonna take out one of the iPhone prints. Super curious to see what that's gonna look like. Whoa. Okay. Oh, dang.
There we go. There's 3 30-inch by 40-inch prints. That's an entire wall. I think Hunter and Beth are gonna be plenty surprised when they get their eyes on these.
Okay, they're gonna show up in the next couple of minutes here, but I also wanted to send a massive, massive shout out to Brandon T. Brown. He is a Canmore and Banff area photographer. He does amazing work, and he's the one that did these prints for us. So make sure you go and check out his website and check out the kind of imagery he has. It is wild. It's brandontbrown.com. All right, they are here, and we're actually joined by a 4th pro photographer, Jayden Daniels, Wild Imagery. Go check him out on Instagram. There's a handle right there. So they're gonna come on in, and we're gonna get them. We're gonna get some distance between them and the prints first. So let's bring them in and see what they think.
Oh wow,
there we
those
go.
are big.
Yes. They're
Whoa.
sizable. First impressions?
They all look very similar.
First impressions is one's different than the other two, but they all look very similar.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is crazy. It's really close.
Yeah.
That is so disappointing for me. I thought it was gonna be
Do
a
you
lot
feel like you're
more
out of
obvious.
a job now?
Yeah, man.
Dang it.
That's crazy.
So from this
I
distance,
feel like I'm seeing the most detail in the one in the middle.
we'll call that. So we'll do 1, 2, 3. So number 2.
Number 2
Sharp.
seems like more HDR in the trees, which I know a lot of phones go pretty heavy on HDR.
Okay, so if you had to pick one from this distance, this quickly, which one would you choose as your favorite? 1, 2, or 3? Which one do you like the most? Right now.
I
snap
I
decision.
like number 1 the best. I like number 1 the best.
Okay. Number 1 for Hunter.
Same number 2.
Choose your Beth.
I'm gonna go number 3.
Number 3 for Jayden.
Okay.
Naturally. All right, you guys can go in closer. Check it out.
Enhance.
Oh.
What do you think about number 2 now that you're closer?
I don't think it's as good.
It's interesting, hey?
Now up close, I think that's obviously a phone.
Number 2
Yes.
up close
Like
is
I'm
pretty
trying to
crunchy.
figure out if
This is 12.
Yeah, I would guess
100%.
number 2 is
Yeah.
what's it, the older iPhone?
Yeah, you guys nailed it. That's the 13 Pro, and that was taken with, the 12 megapixel main sensor. That was with Pro RAW.
That's
one.
pretty passable.
yeah.
And what I find interesting is that if you take a step, if you're from here, from this distance, it looks really sharp from
Yeah.
here, but the moment you get any closer, it's
Yeah.
crunchy. So it's relying on like visual tricks, assuming you'll only ever view it on a small size, right? And it
Yeah.
looks great. But
So-
if you're doing what Hunter's doing,
So for me,
different story.
yeah, I think that this is
All
the
right.
Sony.
Yeah, number 3 is definitely Sony.
Okay.
Okay.
3 is Sony, number
Yeah.
1 is 14 Pro.
Get yourself into those cool situations. Go off the beaten path. That's what counts the most, I think, with getting.
Good photographs.
Definitely. Totally, yeah. Don't get hung up on gear too much.
Yeah.
As a wildlife photographer, I'm super happy that the iPhone can't zoom in as far yet.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
no 600 millimeter zoom on that thing. Yeah.
Final thoughts between 13 Pro, 14 Pro, and a Pro camera. What do you think?
Might be out of a job soon.
Makes me mad. Not a fan.
I'm only gonna carry a phone camera with me.
All right, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Hit the like button if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Cheers. All the hand signals.